The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
BronxNet. Your voice, your views, your vision.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we deal with the issue of the Bronx gun buyback program. Our guest in studio, Bronx District Attorney Robert Johnson, when we return right here on Perspectives.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let 'em know.
And welcome back to this edition of Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime, and we're glad to have you with us. As always, you can watch Perspectives on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. And if you want to find out more information about the show, don't forget to go to www.bronxnet.org, and you'll see more information. You'll also be able to see some past episodes as well. As we said at the top, another show that deals with the Bronx County gun buyback program, a program that's seen some success and also raises some questions. Our guest in studio is one very familiar to us, Bronx District Attorney Robert Johnson, who's once again here with us on the Set of Perspectives. Good to have you back.
I'm glad to be here, and I really have to commend you for doing a show on the gun buyback program, because it's really one of our most serious endeavors, and doing the show is really a boost to all of us here in the county.
Well, I think one of the things that people think about is that there's a need to want to get guns off the street. And part of that deals with the fact of knowing what guns do. Death, killing, crime. Let's talk first of all of what's on the other side of these guns, because, you know, many people know that a lot of people in the criminal justice system, just for having a gun, not even talking about the ones who've been in jail for firing one. So share with us about guns and the effect it's had, particularly here in the borough of the Bronx.
Well, it's an effect that I realized even as a youngster, and I would hope that every citizen realizes. I mean, the gun is an instrument of death. And I lived in a household with a court officer. My father was a court officer and a court clerk, and he legally had a weapon that he needed for his job, and he kept it in a locked box. But as a youngster, I knew that was something that could do harm to me. It could do harm to a lot of people, and I really tried to keep my distance from it. And we see examples of that every day on the streets of the Bronx, unfortunately. I mean, this past weekend was horrendous. A mother walking with her 2-year-old son was shot down. Claudia Millon shot down on Park Avenue here in the Bronx. A 5-year-old girl wounded on Morrison Avenue on this past Friday. This devastates families. It takes lives. It harms people, some people permanently, and it devastates their loved ones. And we in the district attorney's office have seen that year in and year out. You know, we not only prosecute the cases, but we sit down with the victims, with the families, and try to not just explain to them what's going on in the criminal justice system, but explain to them what can become of their lives, how they can make something of their lives after having gone through such a horrible incident.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about this, and we have this program here, obviously the need is to get guns off of the streets and buying guns off the street. Now, there's some critics who say this is something that doesn't work, this is something we shouldn't do, but you come at it from a different perspective. So share your perspective on why do you think this is a viable program?
Well, because every single weapon out there is something that can cause death. And if you remove that weapon from the hands of someone who's not supposed to have it, even if they think they're being responsible. You know, there are people who say, well, I need it for my job, I need it for this, I need it for that to protect myself. Well, first of all, we have a licensing procedure for that. The police department licenses. And second of all, you may think you have it for that purpose, and it could be turned against you. Or you can use it in a moment of anger in a way that it was not meant to be used. And you're going to cause serious destruction, as I've indicated. So if one removal can save life or injury, then multiple removals save multiple lives and injuries. And the past 2 gun buybacks that we had in the Bronx were, I believe, the 2 most successful one-day programs that the police department had. We had close to 1,000 guns recovered the first time we did this. And then last year we had it again, and we almost got 1,200 guns off the street. That you can't argue with that. You can say, well, some of the people just had it in their home for protection, but even that person, it's a threat. It's a threat.
Right. So let's walk through the process this year. It's a buyback program. There'll be 3 locations that Bronxites or people can come and drop their guns off to, right?
That's correct. The 3 pastors have been very, very kind to us. We have a lot of partners in this program. The commissioner in the New York City Police Department, Commissioner Ray Kelly, they put money into it. They put personnel in it. They have officers to dismantle weapons and take the weapons in. We have the borough president, who has had a Peace in the Streets initiative, Ruben Diaz Jr., and he's also helping us get the word out about this. In fact, it was he who came to the commissioner and myself and said, we want to do this again in the Bronx. And the pastors are at Grace Temple Church at 2401 Marion Avenue here in the Bronx. Also, Bronx Tabernacle at 1755 Watson Avenue, and Our Lady of Grace Church at 3985 Bronxwood Avenue. And those 3 churches, their doors will be open from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, June 4th, for the receipt of illegal handguns mostly. Not to say we won't take rifles, but the handguns is the focus, and for that reason, someone who turns in a handgun will receive a $200 cash card, no questions asked. Someone who turns in a rifle will receive a $20 card, no questions asked. We're not trying to arrest people. That's not the objective at all. In fact, if you and your cameras were to show up at one of these sites, we would ask you to step back because we don't want the attention on the people. We want the people to feel comfortable in coming into the location. That's why churches are the locations. It's someplace where I think people have a higher comfort level, and the police department will take the gun without any questions at all.
Let me do this. Let me go to our cameras. Our cameras were out in the street. We asked some questions about the gun buyback program. Got your perspective on it. And here's what a few of you had to say.
Well, I'm not very familiar with it. So one concern I would have is who is providing this money, because that's how you find out what the motive behind it is. Again, I'm curious as to where this money is going to come from. So I suppose it sounds a little bit more fishy than not, now that, the more I think about it.
Okay. If anything to get fewer guns into the hands of younger people, older people for that matter, I would agree with. But I could see how it easily could become a scam, yeah. But however, it is something. It's better than nothing. Probably is a better way, which I don't know, better way to get to the root cause of gun possession. But this is just at least bringing it to the consciousness of people, parents, kids. Yeah.
All right. I think it'd be a way a criminal can make a quick buck. I mean, anyone could find a gun anywhere and, go sell it to a church or wherever. So it's a little fishy. Yeah.
Like a lot of laws, they don't really work, or they're not really instilled, or a lot of the programs, they're not the best as far as actually working, but they're good as far as the morale, because at least people now feel like, oh, okay, something's being done, and they feel a little bit more safe. We'll never really be safe. We'll never really get rid of all the guns, but it's good to know that there's something out there that's maybe encouraging it.
Okay. I mean, it is good because, it is removing weapons that cause harm from the community out of it, but at the same time, like I mentioned before, there's still a whole bunch of guns that are coming into the community. So I think that's really what the authorities have to concentrate on.
And that's just some of what you had to say, talking about the Bronx gun buyback program. And I guess you got a chance to hear a little bit of the criticism. One question that comes out is, okay, where does the money come from? Everybody wants, in an economy like this, people have the right to know.
All right. Well, there is certain money that comes through our office that we cannot use for personnel services. We can't use to pay salaries. And that's money that we've seized. We seized money from people who commit crimes. The most common example is the drug dealer with large sums of money. We go and then take a civil action, go into court, and some of that money is at our disposal. And the police department is also has certain money that they get in a similar way. So what better way to use the money than to protect the community? That's one of the uses we have. We use it, for educational purposes. We may use it to buy supplies sometimes. We may use it to send assistants to get training in certain types of prosecutions. But this is something where we can use it, where we believe that we're going to be able to save lives. And so the commissioner and I have put in equal amounts of money to use to purchase the guns.
Okay, so you talk about that. What do you say to the critic that also says, that one of the young ladies says, okay, well, it's almost like paying the criminal back. What do you say to that?
Well, paying them back, I don't know if it's paying them back, but what the alternative is, to leave the gun in the hands of that person and the potential for harm that way, compared to the harm of giving them $200, which, as the borough president said earlier today, you could use that. It's Father's Day coming up, it's graduations, it's the season of weddings. There are all kinds of positive things that the money could be used for. Yes, some people will use it in a negative way, but at the end of the day, we've got the gun, that person doesn't have the gun. And that's what we're trying to do, balance out the potential for harm.
In previous years, 1,000 guns off the street, 1,200 guns off the street. Your target goal this year is?
I don't know that you're going to have a target goal. I mean, I don't know what's out there, unfortunately. There's still far too many guns out there. I'm told that already this year, 350 guns have been seized through arrest. I think we hit 1,000 each of the last 2 or 3 years. So there are guns out there, unfortunately.
Question is, where are the guns coming from? I mean, people are saying, listen, you know what? When you see guns in the hands of young people, you got to ask the question. They can't purchase one, but yet and still they can. Where are these guns coming from?
Well, that's an important question, and that's something that we've asked the Congress to deal with, because in other states, notably states like Florida and Virginia, it's much easier to purchase a weapon than it is in New York State. And we all know how easy it is to come up Route 95 in an automobile. If you don't have traffic violations, nobody knows what you're transporting. So that, and we've had instances where we've done stings, where we've gotten people who are transporting guns, and we've purchased large numbers of guns. In one such case, the person actually drew a map out to the undercover showing this is how you evade detection coming up 95 from Florida. So there are other states who have not toughened up on their gun laws, and unfortunately they end up in the streets and being sold in the black market. I did want to also address one of the other points that one of the speakers mentioned, and that was addressing the root problems. This is not really addressing the root cause of why people are purchasing guns, and that's something some of our other programs do try to address. Our community affairs unit does get into the schools. We use our staff as role models. We have curricula in the schools, some for 5th graders, some for middle schoolers, some for high school students, teaching about the negatives of gun usage and negatives of substance abuse, teaching leadership skills, teaching about careers, trying to get youngsters on the right track. We understand that. And in fact, education, to me, is the best way to fight crime. So we try to use all aspects. We want to prosecute people who will possess an illegal gun. We want to educate youngsters not to possess the illegal gun. And if the gun is out there, we want to buy it back and get it off the streets.
I want to take a quick break and come back with more with Bronx District Attorney Robert Johnson, talking about the Bronx County's gun buyback program, taking place this Saturday at 3 churches and 3 locations right here in the borough of the Bronx. Stay with us, because after the break, we're going to give you where those locations are, and then we'll also hear a little bit more from the district attorney when we return right here on Perspectives.
911, where's your emergency?
Please, send help.
Tell me what happened?
He's dead. Please, he was shot.
Okay, what's going on right now?
I think he needs help. Send help.
You're really not that talented.
You're not attractive.
Too fat.
You're too short.
Too old. Why don't you just give up?
Give up.
Just give up.
I do have to stand up for the very positive impact of public access television for both the cultural arts as well as education.
There is nothing as great as BronxNet because it gives people like myself access which the larger networks will never give me, and these people will never be known. And the talent that's here, the musical talent, the poetry, the artists that are at BronxNet is just astounding, in front of the camera and in back of the camera.
In all our public activities developing Hunts Point, the help of BronxNet TV has been invaluable. The best gift that BronxNet TV made to Hunts Point and to the Bronx was the production for HPEDC at a very low cost of the Emmy Award-winning video, The World is Coming to Hunts Point. This video, better than anything else, showed the vitality of the Hunts Point industry and help us portray the true image of Hunts Point to the world.
For nonprofits that are serving in educational ways where culture and a lot of the arts are lacking from the schools, we're really picking up the slack there. And by being able to have access to public access TV, we're able to provide where the educational system is lacking.
This must live. I think that there's no greater accomplishment than what BronxNet gives young people and old people like myself.
Voice your support to keep the channels open and strong. Online, visit bronxnet.org and click on Support Public Access Television and sign the letter to your local representatives.
Chill out when you're stealing my things.
You're causing a
I wouldn't have to raise my voice if you would just give it back and stop being like a criminal.
I don't have your cell phone.
Oh God, look at yourself. What are you offering?
Is this a thief's uniform?
Oh my God.
You see all these people standing around here? Why am I the one?
I'm sorry, homie.
Right
okay.
What?
Don't make this a big deal. Just give it back, okay?
Did you see me?
You know, I just know you took it.
Where are your
yourself.
witnesses?
Look at
Where
yourself.
are your witnesses?
What?
Did you see me? Did you see me?
Hey, you left us in the bathroom.
And we're back here on Perspectives. Our guest in studio, Bronx District Attorney Robert Johnson. We're talking about the Bronx gun buyback program. As we were sharing a little bit during the break, there are plenty of opportunities for people not to get engaged with guns. And I know your office does do some sort of outreach and alternatives to let people know. I know you spoke about being in the schools. Why don't you share a little bit about some of the alternatives that are out there for people with this gun issue?
We do as much of it as we can. I mean, to the point that some of our staff volunteer to read in a daycare center, just reading to young people, trying to get them used to that. We have a formalized program for fifth graders called STAR, Students Together Avoiding Risk, where part of the curricula is about the negatives of substance abuse, about guns. We start out asking them, who's seen a gun, who's seen this, who's seen that. And we test them, and their opinions change about guns and about drugs as they go along through the curricula. Another one of our programs is called Concept for middle school students. And that particularly focuses on leadership and judgment, making decisions that are going to impact your life forever. Just the arrest itself can damage you forever, let alone being shot down by a rival person who has their own weapon.
Right.
So we try to go through those issues with the young people. We've utilized one of the gems of the Bronx, a group called EARS, Effective Alternative Resolution Services. They celebrated their 25th year last year. Unfortunately, under the funding limits, they're under some great difficulty and may have to shut their doors. And that's a group that uses young people as peer mediators. So they have high school students and they train them how to do workshops, how to do role plays. And I've seen it. And these are not jokes. They stay in character when they're doing a role play. They let you see how someone who, whatever type they're doing, it could be bias, it could be sex abuse, it could be violence. They let you see how someone who's into that thinks. and what the thought process is and how they can avoid that thought process, how they can step away from invitations to be in gangs by using their wits and their own ability to speak up and diplomatically get out of a situation. So we try to show that to young people also.
Can you explain to somebody who might be watching, there might be a young person out there watching right now, talking about guns and the effects of guns? We talked about the victimization. We haven't talked about the criminal justice component of how it really actually takes, and it can really destroy a person's life by just one simple incident.
And the prosecution, for example, for murder, goes all the way down to a 13-year-old. We can prosecute a 13-year-old in adult court for murder. We could prosecute 14 and 15-year-olds for other violent crimes in addition, and everybody else, 16 and above, all crimes as an adult. You're facing life sentences when you take a life. Just the possession, illegal possession of a loaded gun in New York State carries a 3.5-year minimum. There are ways that you can maybe get a year or 2 years if you take a plea quickly, but that's what you're facing. It's that or trial. And
that's why we see, like in a case like Plaxico Burress, that's something similar.
That's exactly right, and because that's what the New York State legislature has deemed necessary to try and stop the proliferation of the guns on the streets. When we had a law originally that said a mandatory year, it had an exception that you could drive a truck through. So the judges were using the exception and people weren't getting it. That exception is gone. The criminal justice system is not joking with people who possess loaded handguns.
And so we encourage you, if you know somebody with a gun and you know somebody with a handgun, there is this gun buyback program. We're encouraging you to go to one of these 3 locations that you see at the bottom of the screen, and you'll be able to turn in a gun, no questions asked. For those people who want to know exactly where it is, again, you're talking about the Grace Temple Church, talking about the Bronx Tabernacle Church, and the Our Lady of Grace Church, 3 separate locations across the borough of the Bronx. All you've got to do is go turn in your gun, no questions asked, and it's what, a $200?
$200 card, and you can turn in multiple guns. So if you turn in 2 guns, it's $400. If you turn in 3 or more, $600.
And so hopefully, with that said, it'll motivate somebody to do that and possibly get these guns off of the street because, as you said, you have no idea as to what the numbers of guns we're dealing with out there.
We don't, but we have the money. If we get another 1,000 or 1,500, the commissioner and the police department and the district attorney's office will find the money to make it good and purchase those weapons.
What are you hearing from people who've taken part in the program?
You mean people who have actually turned in the guns?
Yeah, have you heard anything specifically from them?
Well, I've visited the sites when we've done it the last couple of times, and I think they found it orderly. I think they found it worthwhile. They were treated with respect. Like I said, they were not questioned, and they walked out of there with that card. I've not heard one complaint from anyone who availed themselves.
Hearing a critic say, okay, what happens if somebody turns in a gun and the gun is in connection with the case? What happens then?
They're not gonna determine that. They're not because we're making that commitment that there's not any prosecution that's going to come out of it.
Okay, so we encourage you, take advantage of the opportunity that you can do this here. If you know somebody who's harboring illegal handguns and it's time to really get them off the street. Too many innocent people have died. Just looking at what's occurred in the borough of the Bronx this weekend, it's sad just to know that innocent people are being wounded and lives are actually being taken. And, you come on this show now, but, you come on after a tremendous weekend.
I know, and it's always been there, unfortunately. Even though we've made great progress and the homicide rate's down from 653 in 1990 to 127 last year and an all-time low of 113 the year before, we're 14 years under 200 coming down from 653, but that's still too many, 120, right. 113
One is too many,
people.
Of course.
It's too many, and like I said, these are real people, and fortunately some of the people who've been victims have turned it to their advantage and that they're speaking out of it. I think of people like Gloria Cruz, whose niece Naisha Pearson was shot down some years ago. She's now heading up the Bronx chapter of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, having a Mother's Day march. Wallace Hassan, who was in the Patterson houses, he's not a survivor to my knowledge, but he's a community member who believes in what we're doing. He's established a museum near the Patterson houses where youngsters can go in and see clippings about all the different incidents that have taken place, and it comes alive for them. We welcome that kind of support also.
And so there's the collaborative partnership involved in this. And as we say, you got the churches involved, you've got law enforcement involved, and also you've got community agencies involved, as well as just the plain old community.
That's why the Bronx is such a great place to live, work, and play. It really is a good community. You know, we're focusing in on a very dangerous and negative element, but there is so much here positive. And that's why we've made the strides that we've had. That's why we've had the success that we've had.
Can you talk about the success? Because you talked about that number being so high, up in the 600 range, all the way down to, you know, a little over 100 throughout the course of the year. What do you think is the huge factor that marks success to get these numbers to where they are?
Multiple factors. The police department is strategized differently. You know, this whole concept of CompStat allows them to keep, the commissioner actually has it up to the minute, the computer statistics, so that they really can deploy personnel differently than they used to. You know, the precincts are divided up into sectors. Well, they know what sector, what corner has more shootings, more gun arrests, and that's where they put the officers. And I think that really helps to hold down crime. In addition to that, we've tried to back them up. From the moment I took office, even though the gun law was a lot weaker than it is now, we said that we're not going to be part of that. We're going to stand firm and try and get tougher sentences. The community shows up at the precinct council meetings, shares information about what the concerns are, what the causes are, and what they want done. And most importantly and most overlooked is that the people in the age groups who commit crime have to be doing something different if this crime is not happening the way it used to. So I'm very, very pleased about that. I think young people are making better decisions. I think the fact that we and other groups like 100 Black Men are doing mentoring are having an impact. I think the schools are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think families are doing more in terms of what they need to be doing to keep their youngsters moving in the right direction.
All right. Well, Bronx District Attorney Robert Johnson, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. And hopefully this year's program will be a success as well.
Always a pleasure talking to you, Doc.
All righty. All right. Well, we encourage you to stay tuned to Perspectives. As we said, there are 3 locations that you can go and find out and turn in actually those handguns to. I want to let you know Grace Temple Church, Bronx Tabernacle Church, Our Lady of Grace Church. Make sure that you go out there. If you know somebody that's got a handgun, excellent time to actually turn it in. Let's try and get some of these guns off of the streets. And before we leave, we want to give a special shout out to Susan Johnson Cook, who will actually be sworn in this week as the United States Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. That ceremony will be taking place in Washington, D.C., and we give her the congratulations and all the best here. That about wraps it up for us here on Perspectives. I'm Darren Jaime. Until the next time we meet, stay safe and share your perspective with someone else. It might just make a difference in their life.
Thank you.